Hi, I'm Claire Connolly.
And I'm Amy Andrews. Welcome to the very first episode of How to Watch Movies Like a Writer. The movie we are discussing today is Sleepless in Seattle by the fabulous Nora Ephron. We will be going through and answering the same questions every time we do this. So we're going to start with Claire. Did you enjoy the movie?
I love this movie. It's one of my favorites. Gets me every time. I cry at the end. I just have all the feels. I think what I love about it is a very non-traditional romance in the sense that the couple don't actually properly connect until the end of the movie. But it's not just a love story between a couple. For me, it's like the love story between the dad and son, and even a friend love story, like between Becky and Annie and Sam and the Rita Wilson character and her husband. There's just really that love permeates it in so many different ways. What about you? What are your thoughts on this one?
Yes, I realized that when I sat down to watch it again, I don't think I'd actually watched the entire movie all the way through. So, or at least.
Is that because they don't meet? Like, did that kind of take the magic out of it for you?
I think so, maybe. Yes. I mean, maybe I had it was just a long time ago. I'd forgotten some of the bits, but I felt like I had not seen some parts. So that was a mistake. And part of me was like, I'm not particularly interested in like how could they pull that off sort of thing. But I'm very, very glad that I have watched it again because I did really enjoy it the sort of second time around as well. Yeah, I agree. I think it has many different facets, and it feels like a bit of a big warm hug. Really, don't you think? Like I kind of felt
100%.
embraced by it the entire time, and it's Christmas time in the movie as well. So, what more appropriate movie to be watching, really?
And I think Nora Ephron movies, a lot like elements of Sex and the City, have that thing where money is just not an object for the characters. Like, so the fact that there's just all this, they're very wealthy, their lives are very fabulous. It's that, oh, we're going to New York, we'll stay at the plaza and we'll do this. And it gives it that cozy, there's nothing gritty about the setting. The setting is just so charming.
Very charming, very charming. Even Seattle, which rains, what is it? It's 97% of the year or whatever. Even that was, that whole thing was just, they made that even seem charming and warm and romantic, and yeah, it was lovely. And so let's just talk about the tropes to start with. What tropes do you think Sleepless in Seattle embodies?
Yeah, so that sort of, for me, that Insta love at first sight, which is so tricky to do well. And I just think for me, this movie nails it. It's following on from that idea that there is only one perfect person in the world for you, which a lot of romance novels sort of do capture. Even though we see that Sam has been married before, from Annie's perspective, we genuinely feel that this is her other half. But it also makes me realize I have a real soft spot for love triangle romances when they are done well. And I know you and I share a love as well for Sweet Home Alabama, which is another movie that does this so well because it doesn't villainize the bad guy. It doesn't villainize the other guy or the guy who she doesn't end up with. They're both, as Walter in this movie, just beautiful characters who deserve better. And they're very decent with the breakup, which makes them even more likable.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I agree. Definitely Insta Love. And even when I guess he sees her at the airport, about halfway through the movie when she's coming to Seattle, even like I guess Insta lust in a way because clearly there's chemistry. He feels that kind of pull and that chemistry straight away, doesn't he?
So I found that scene particularly interesting. I actually watched this with my 11-year-old daughter, I everything we watch with our kids, we check it on Common Sense Media first. I'm like, is this appropriate? And Common Sense Media, which is sort of notoriously conservative with their age recommendations, said 11 plus. So I went, tick, that's great. And there are sexual references, but they're pretty oblique and harmless. So we watched it together. But when she was typing his name in at work to find out, where he lived and sending a detective to take photos, she's like, Mom, this is stalking. Which, having watched it myself as around that age, that never occurred to me to think that.
Same when she's watching him play with his son on the beach.
Yeah.
Uh,
But the reason
there
I
I'm
think they get away with it is that scene in the airport, because in that moment it flips to being kind of a mutual insta love.
yes, yeah, that's true. It's a good counterpoint. They kind of balance each
Mm.
other out, don't they? That's true.
Yeah.
Right, let's talk about the opening. What are you hooked? Are we hooked from the beginning, and how does it hook you in? I I feel like it definitely opens from Sam's point of view.
Mm,
No, what's the
mm.
father's name? Sam.
Yeah.
And you're immediately sad. You can tell his depth of grief and sadness at the loss of his wife, and you instantly just wanting to be happy. Instantly.
Mm.
So instantly I'm like, okay, I'm here for that. He needs to be happy because he's just so sad. I thought
Yeah.
opening from his point of view was great, particularly when the counterbalance of that is Annie, who's the flip side of him. She's newly engaged, she's happy, she's got a life ahead of her, and everything's kind of rosy in her world.
Yeah. I think you're right. To me, the opening in this is the equivalent of a prologue. And it's making your characters sympathetic in the sense of, not only has Sam endured this awful, unimaginable loss, it's that he has a little boy that he now has to raise alone. And it's just hearing him, I think the opening line is, "Mummy got sick." And it's just from that moment on, you are rooting for Sam and Jonah, which is,
Absolutely.
as I say, the prologue. So if I'm writing an awful, kind of hard-hearted alpha billionaire, I give him an incredibly sympathetic backstory that's shown in a prologue, so that no matter what he does, there is a level of sympathy and connection with that character, where you're still rooting for him and you understand him.
Absolutely. And that's what we talk about on our courses, don't we? About how you can make a character, having your characters be sympathetic
Yeah,
is very important. They have to be likable, but they have to be
exactly.
sympathetic.
In fact,
Mm.
even oftentimes the least likable characters are the most sympathetic, where you're just rooting for them even when you can feel them making the wrong choices.
And that's what I guess that goes back to motivation too, doesn't it? Which is something we also discussed in the course. You've got to motivate your characters properly. Motivate their actions properly. People will forgive them. Readers will forgive them anything, or
Yeah,
viewers will forgive them anything as long as they can see what got them to that point.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I guess we can move now on to characters. We're kind of talking about that anyway. What did you think about? What were your favourite parts of Annie, and what were your favourite parts of Sam? And I guess also Jonah, because he formed such an integral part of that,
Oh
entire
man, Jonah's
storyline.
just adorable. That scene with Jonah and Jonah's girlfriend Jessica, where she's like booking him to fly, and do you want me to say that you're 12 and you're like really embarrassed about your height? He's just adorable. And again, I don't actually think he's bratty. I think he's adorable, but he is selfish in the way all kids are, of course. And he's been through this grief, but those moments that reach into your heart where he starts talking about he's forgetting his mum, and
Yeah.
and then Sam has that beautiful moment of saying, just little irrelevant things about her that are hyper relevant to them because she was just the love of their lives. Just incredibly beautiful. And the juxtaposition as well. I don't know if it was intentional or not. I was reflecting on this as I watched it. The scene with Annie in her kitchen listening to the best of Marsha Fieldstone, where she's peeling the apple. And I wondered if they were going for her to peel it in one strip, like Sam says Maggie used to be able to.
Yeah.
And then she didn't. And I thought, or maybe they were going for this as a contrast. She's not replacing her. It's that she's different.
Yes.
But
Yeah. I thought that too. I thought, they're gonna, because there were those moments throughout the film where they completely synced up, didn't they? And that was what kind of helped you realize, I think, that they were going to be, that when it got to the end, they're probably going to be, all right. We'll talk about this later. That they said the same words together when she was listening to the radio in the car, driving in the car, and she was listening to the first interview. She said the same words out loud. I wrote them down.
magic.
The whole magic they said that together, and then they said something else together. So yeah, I think that really kind of helped you think that.
I know, and I know this is wearing off character, but this is the way it's going to be when we do these episodes, obviously.
Yeah.
The references there were, so Sam talked about meeting Maggie, and it was the simplest thing. It was their hands touching, and he just knew. And the mom, Annie's mom, talked about meeting the dad, and their hands touched, and they just knew. And then at the end, so we as the viewer / reader know that when their hands touch at the end and they just can't stop looking at each other, they just know. And so we know.
That's right. And also Annie's mother said the same thing. When Annie's father touched Annie's mother's hand, it was magic. And so when he says that on the radio and she says it at the same time, it's another little, little pearl of a moment where you kind of, well, you're just going to go, oh, yes. It's just, as a romance, it works so well. It's those little Easter eggs, I guess, in a way, that kind of keep you reading as a reader, isn't it? It's like these two are almost destined, really, to be together.
Yeah.
And I think the movie's kind of about that, isn't it? It's like, as you were saying, it's like there's one person for everyone. This is almost like their fate or their destiny to actually, through all the machinations of like, being apart all the time, that they are actually going to get together and be perfect for each other.
And this is the thing too. So Ali talks about this in our How to Write Love course, where you have to have the belief that the couple have what it takes to survive beyond the chemistry and that lovely happily ever after that you get in a romance novel. You have to see that actually they have enough compatibility to make it. And it's what I find so interesting about Sleepless is we don't see them on the page or on the screen together in a sense to know that for sure, and yet we do, because we see them running in parallel and we just know how compatible they are for one another and how their values overlap and their senses of humor.
Yeah, we see enough synchronicity between them separately to know that they're going to be okay. Ali calls it the HEA, happily ever after guarantee. That's what she calls it in the course. That how do we know that when you shut the book and it's the end, that they're actually going to be okay in the everyday one of the middle.
Yeah, they're not going to have another black moment blow up in a month.
Yes, it's like who's going to take out the laundry today, kind of stuff that relationships kind of devolve into after a certain period of time. That kind of, they have enough synchronicity to have that magic to sort of keep them going through all those moments.
And I even love that moment where Annie's talking to Becky on the phone. I think they're talking in person at this stage, and she's calling the Rita Wilson character a hoe because she thinks it's Victoria, the other woman. And she says, but the thing is, she didn't look like a hoe. She looked like someone we'd be friends with. And I think even that is that HEA guarantee, because you can see how important those people are in his life. They were important to him and Maggie, how much they're rooting for him to be happy. And so the fact that Annie recognized it was almost like a love at first sight for friends.
Yes, yeah, very true. And also another moment of synchronicity, I thought, again, going back to when she was listening to the first radio interview in the car, both her and Sam were really mistrustful of Dr. Marsha. They both were like, yeah. And I thought they're both the same in so many ways. They both have that same kind of, jaded outlook about things like that, as well as, all the other things where they seem to match up along the way. And I also love that bit that, to all intents and purposes, Annie is very happy, and I think that you pointed this out, Claire. When we were talking about this sort of, prior, I was saying the only glitch for me was the fact that, she had a fiance and yet she's falling in love with this other man. And you were saying at the beginning they laid that Easter egg to do with
magic, hands brushing.
No, I'm going to forget it. I wrote it down because I knew that I probably would forget it. It's a sign in the beginning when she's trying to dress on the wedding dress with the mother, and the wedding dress it rips, the arm rips or something, and she says, "Oh, it's a sign," and the mother says, "No, it's not a sign." So I think that lays an Easter egg in your mind to know actually maybe she doesn't think this relationship she's in is the be all and end all. There's something she feels that she's missing, and that's I agree. Kind of, then
even when the mum talked about when she met the dad, I felt there was a look in Annie's face of that wasn't how it was for her and Walter. And you can see that there. I think that had Annie and Walter got married, that they would have been an 8 out of 10 happy. And that's the thing that's done so well, is that it's just not enough. As he says, I don't want to be someone settles for.
Exactly. I think they would have been divorced. I was thinking about this as I was watching it. Maybe not. It might have taken him 10 or 20 years, but I think because he wasn't exactly what she wanted, because they were both lovely people. He was a lovely person, but I don't think that gets you through an entire marriage. So I agree. So I think what else we're going to talk about character. A moment that makes the hero real, or the heroine real. Did you have one of those sort of moments?
Well, obviously,
I know I had.
The loss of his wife is very, relatable.
I absolutely love the moment, and I think it's goes deep to the sort of emotional conflict in the story. Was when he's talking to Dr. Marsha, and he says, she says, "What are you going to do?" And he says, "I'm going to get out of bed every morning and breathe in and out, and then after a while, I won't have to remind myself. I'm going to get out of bed every morning, and I'm going to remind myself to breathe in and out, and then after a while, I won't have to remind myself anymore." I was like, oh, that's obviously not a flaw for him, but that was sort of that moment that made the hero really real for me. You could already feel his grief. You could feel his grief, but that really kind of cemented it for me, that moment where it was just like, oh, the man is just going through emotions at the moment. He's just, and he doesn't really expect it to be any different or want it to be any different. It's only 18 months after his wife is died. It's not like it's been 10 years. So I think that he's in that situation too. He feels like, well, it hasn't been that long. He's still kind of in that deep, dark grief, really.
Yeah, because he loved her so much. I think for me that there's probably two I'd highlight. So one of them, and this is a really good technique to use when you're writing, is we see them because of these strong friendships that both of them have on screen. We see them through the veil of their friends. So we see that, again, it's instant likability. If you've got a character who is liked by likable people, you know that you would like them. So that makes them quite real for me. And that scene right at the very end, I mean, there's heaps of things that make these characters real for me, but picking up on that, like how hard he tries with Victoria, bless him, because she's good on paper.
Yeah.
That scene at the end where he's at the top of the Empire State Building and Jonah's run away and he's hugging him and he's going, "I'm trying. Am I doing all right? Like, I'm not messing anything up. Have I messed anything up?" And Jonah's going, "No." And you just think, that is just so how you would feel if you were plunged into suddenly being a single parent, a single dad, and just going, holy shit, like, am I doing this okay? That I feel like everyone in the world can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the flip side, you were talking about that before, the flip side of friends being a foil, this person's got great friends. If their friends like him or her, of course I'm going to like him. Or, I think we do, when we're writing books, it's important to remember that if you have terrible characters in the book that are friends of the main characters, that also that can also influence a reader, because, as I always say, why would they be friends with such a horrible person? That's a huge reflection on them as a person. So having characters might be fine if that's what you want to create, in your book. But if you don't, having overly nasty characters just to create some sort of tension that's not really deeply rooted to the actual conflict to start with, that can just reflects badly on your own, the people that you're trying to make likable and sympathetic.
So, and again, with Annie and Becky, I loved their close friendship, and I loved you also got a sense from Becky that she didn't like Walter. Like, where there's that scene where Annie's trying to remember something funny, something hilarious that Walter had said. What was it? He said something so funny the other day. I couldn't stop laughing. And you can just see the skepticism on Becky's face because she's not impressed. And that also sort of sort of subtly undermines the Annie Walter relationship to the reader / viewer to go, this isn't her MFEO guy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. And I like how they didn't. So they've made Walter out to be, nice guy with a bunch of allergies who, a bit of a, can be a bit of a drip, bit of an old woman as far as that goes. But they haven't done, in contrast, made the Sam character be some amazing He-Man who runs marathons and can, leap tall buildings in a single bound. They haven't gone and made them both complete opposites. So you're not left to wonder, well, why would you be with this person and not that person? I like that they've been subtle with both of them. They haven't gone over the top with Walter, and they haven't gone over the top with Sam. You're right; they're just genuinely nice people. I think they've given Walter enough little quirks and irritations to also make it believable that Annie's, not kind of fully there as well.
Because she's quite quirky and silly and funny.
Yes, he's very straight down the line, and yes, very, which is fine. And that's the thing. It was fine for Annie at the beginning of the movie, wasn't it? But obviously there's just this little thing that she just, isn't kind of aware of until she hears a guy on a radio, or hears his son on hears Jonah on the radio. And then I love that. I think for me, that was the moment that I really fell in love with Annie in the movie, was when she was listening to that first call on the radio and she's crying as she's driving along. She hates that she's listening to it. She feels like that Dr. Marsh is invading their privacy and it's terrible and awful, but she's quickly, completely, immersed in it, and she's crying as she goes. And just, I don't know, I guess it must be Meg Ryan's acting chops, but you can just, the look in her eyes, you can tell she's so deeply invested and so deeply, sorry for this man and his son who are in this situation. Oh, I think that was really good.
It was beautiful. Yeah, really felt it.
Very. Yeah, you could see she's very emotionally sympathetic, which again is something that you want your characters to be. Okay, I want to talk about the midpoint now, or I guess also important thing about in movies and books is the tension, right? The tension is what kind of keeps the plot sort of going forward. So, so about the midpoint, do you think does the tension, some movies, the tension, or books, you can get a bit of a saggy middle, and so do you think does the tension keep up throughout the movie? Is it just sort of kind of treading water till it gets to the end, to the Empire State Building, and then we're all, kind of, I mean, have the big Hollywood moment?
For me, well, this one, by never having them really meet properly until the Empire State, but they keep the tension right up until the end when she gets up there and he is gone. We are seeing her at dinner with Walter, breaking up with Walter. And I love that she broke up with Walter when there was no plan B. It wasn't that she was going to meet Sam and then maybe go back to Walter. It was a clean break with Walter, which was, I think, important for her credibility and likability. But that whole scene as she's getting up to the top of the Empire, she's denied entry to the Empire State Building at first. She has to wangle her way up. She gets there, they're not there. She finds the bag. You think, what's going to happen now? And then when they arrive, and even right at the end when he says, well, we'd better get going, and they leave you hanging thinking that Sam and Jonah are going to leave. And then he says, shall we? And so for me, it was actually a simple tool to keep the tension up, was that waiting for them to actually connect.
Yeah, because I think it would be very easy in a movie or in a book to lose that tension when they're not. We always say try to keep the main characters on the page all the time. Keep them, don't have great swathes of time when they're like not on the page together, or they're like not interacting together. So this movie should, in lots of ways, not really have worked. I think that Jonah really helps keep the tension up. It's Jonah who's like, look at this letter, Dad. Look at this letter. No, I don't like her. I like Annie. Look at her. Read this. Here's one. Let's do this. Always pushing his father. So he's kind of, and I think you can see the stakes are really high for Jonah as well. So I think that's a really, I don't know if it's intentional. I guess it might have been because, Nora Ephron was a goddess, but I loved how he was there constantly saying, you know, I want a new mother, and now you're with what was the new girlfriend's name?
Victoria.
Victoria. And now you're with Victoria, but Victoria's, you know, that whole kind of scene, he's polite to Victoria, but you can tell that he's, you know, he's not on Team Victoria at all, and he's constantly like niggling away, niggling. I really love how they use that sort of secondary character of Jonah to keep the tension going, and to be always confronting his father. Every time he did that, his father Sam had to think, you know, maybe he's right, maybe she's not the one. What am I doing? You know, am I just going through the motions? I thought that was a really cool way to do it.
You're right, because we as the viewer going, listen to Jonah. Annie's amazing. She's perfect for you. And so even where Jonah's telling the friends that he wants to meet Annie or whatever, you know, you were watching that just going, yes, go and meet Annie.
Yeah, it's like, also I think one of the tropes is like long distance relationship, right? Long distance romance, because he keeps using that, and certainly that is part of the conflict. But I like they do it several times, talk about how the distance, like that scene where he like pulls a map down from the wall and says, "Where are we? We're here. You know, where's Baltimore? It's all the way over there." There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 22 states between us. I love that scene. And it really plays into that long distance trope as well, which, you know, is something that's, you know, really popular, and in itself creates lots of tension and conflict because, you know,
well, that's it. How are they going to make this work? And yet you don't doubt that they will at the end.
No, but you have to make it, obviously. That's at the end, you never doubt it, but, you know, throughout the movie you're wondering how they're going to make this work. And, you know, when you're writing a book, same thing. There has to be all this question, well, how is this in practicality? It's all well and good for it to, you know, for the music to swell up and them to be in love, but how practically are they going to make this work? And yeah, I love that bit. I love that scene. It was so good.
That's so good.
So what do we think about, you know, that the kind of all this lost moment, the sort of just before the end, where it all looks like it's not going to work out, and I was thinking about this. I was thinking that I guess it kind of starts with when Jonah gets on the plane and goes to New York. It feels like Jonah thinks, you know, that everything is lost at that point in time. I mean, I don't think that Sam thinks that until he realizes Jonah is missing, and then it becomes, you know, a much more urgent thing for him to, like, you know, get to New York. Have you got any thoughts about the all is lost moment, the black moment?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right, because I think that structurally there's like two love stories running through this. I actually think if you track Sam and Jonah's relationship, that's their black moment, right? Is that fight the night before he's meant to go away with Victoria. It's like the tension's been building between them, and Sam's not listening to Jonah, and there's all this grief that underpins their relationship. And then that's the moment where for them you think all hope is lost, and he runs away basically to New York to go meet Annie with like all of $47 in pocket money in his little backpack. But yeah, it is the black moment for them, for Annie and Sam as well. I mean, the whole thing is you just can't see how this is ever going to work, how they're ever going to meet. It feels so implausible. But the way that she seems to recommit to Walter at the same time as that's kind of happening with Jonah and Sam. So I've been stupid. Walter says to her, I feel like you've come back to me. He gives her the ring and Tiffany & Co. that he's had resized. And it all feels like suddenly they're on track. That for me is the black moment. And I love it when she has that moment of, he tells the Dom DeLuise joke or whatever. And she just goes, I have to tell you something.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a black moment for Annie and Walter. I also think maybe the black moment is that point where they miss each other at the top of the Empire State Building. Like, he's been there all day. He's been there with the sun. They go down, and she comes up in the lift, and it's like, oh, after all of this, they're going to miss each other. That was like, it's all been for now sort of thing. It's like, these people. Yeah. I mean, and I guess we kind of, I guess that's pretty close to the end, really, isn't it? So, you know, that resolves quite quickly because he comes back up in the lift, and they have that moment, they touch hands, and they have, you know, that that kiss that took, it was a long time in coming. So I'm pleased, as somebody who always
Not even
the payoff.
they don't. It's just the handhold. They don't. They just look at each other.
Oh, okay.
There's
Sorry,
no
I watched it a couple of weeks ago. It's not even a
No, but
kiss.
you know
You're
what?
right. There's not.
It feels like a kiss. That's the thing. Because of the work they've done with describing hand touching as magical, we just know the significance of that handhold. That's like a marriage proposal. That was just, it was magic. The setup was sublime for that.
And that's, I guess, would you call that the Hollywood moment in the movie? Is that the Hollywood moment? Do you want to explain what the Hollywood moment is, perhaps?
Yeah, so for me, the Hollywood moment is something that I always like to have when I start writing a book. So I'm not a huge plotter, but I like to have an idea of my characters, their conflict. So what is basically going to keep them apart to create the tension that will keep you reading. But I like to know roughly how it will resolve, or the black moment and then the resolution. But I always like to have the Hollywood moment. So for me, that's the scene that when you are watching a movie, there's like one scene that you walk away from the movie that's just etched into your heart and mind. So it's that. It really, and it doesn't even necessarily, it's not even necessarily the end or in the black moment. It's just like in Ever After, the Drew Barrymore Cinderella movie, it's the scene where she comes home from the ball and she's, after Henry's rejected her, and she's crying and she sits on the ground and there's rain everywhere. And it's just, that's the Hollywood moment. So it's not even necessarily a good moment for me. It's just the thing that you remember. And gosh, this movie is just, there are so many. What about for you? Like, give me some thinking time.
Do you think that, I was thinking about the Hollywood moment, and I do think it is that bit at the end where they're on the Empire State Building, and to me there seemed to be like, I loved it, and maybe this is because I think Nora Ephron was from New York, and she writes a really good, almost like a New York love story, really, doesn't she, with this? And it seemed like an iconic moment in a very iconic building, like the whole landscape 100%. Was iconic. The Empire State Building. It was in the movie that they watched, whose name was, the old movie that
Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, that's right. So I've not. No, that's the one. Is that the one where they have the scene in the surf where they're kissing and stuff? Is that An Affair to Remember?
No. An Affair to Remember is very, very taste, but similar. It's a love triangle. Deborah Kerr is engaged to someone else who's great for on paper. So there's a lot of echoes between these two, but it's, I like the women in this movie. I cannot talk about it without crying. It's so good. It's so good. You've got to watch it. It's amazing.
I'm going to watch that, clearly.
But yeah, that sort of tribute to that, yes, is.
There is a tribute to it. So I don't know. I'm sure we could probably dig up a Nora Ephron somewhere talking about probably how much she loved that movie, and maybe she would do a bit of an homage to it or something like that. But I felt like the whole landscape was iconic, and that helped that moment on top of the Empire State Building feel like that Hollywood moment be absolutely iconic as well.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great ending. At the end, with the HEA guarantee, the happily ever after guarantee, you did think, I thought, yeah, these two have met their soulmates, their destiny, their fate on that night has been sealed, and you just knew they were going to be together forever.
Yeah, I did feel that. And I guess another one for me is the scene where she's in the kitchen peeling the apple. I felt like that was a moment where she knew she was actually falling in love, and she knew it was ridiculous, but that's how she felt.
Yeah. It is a great film. I stand corrected. My earlier assessment of the film.
You've never seen the whole film, so.
But I feel like for a film that shouldn't work, considering they're actually not on the same page or on the same screen for so long, it does work really well. Yeah. Even, how old is it now? I think it's 20 odd over. It's over 20 years old, isn't it?
It would be the 90s, I think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not the whole kind of angles where you go, that's a bit stalky. But definitely, mostly, I think it really stands up even today. Definitely,
100%.
Okay, we're done.
We're done.
First, we're done. After this, there's going to be more. After this, if everybody wants to subscribe to the YouTube channel, we'll be doing these regularly. Our next movie, Claire, is going to be.
Well, I think we should do When Harry Met Sally. Let's stick with the holiday theme. So we chose this one because it's Christmas. We've got New Year's coming up. So I reckon we should do When Harry Met Sally, which is just another Nora Ephron, Meg Ryan, amazing film. And I have the reason
I definitely speak more authoritatively on this movie that I've seen 27,000 times. So yes.
Oh, I love it so much. It's going to be amazing. And because we at the How to Write Academy really believe that the storytelling that you can learn from watching movies like a writer improves your writing. So it's a great thing to do. Watch a movie that you love with pen and paper, jot down why it works for you, focus on things like character, dialogue, tension, conflict, resolution, and just start thinking about what makes that work and how you can put that into your writing. So it will be very exciting to look at this.
Or what didn't work even. Sometimes I think you learn more about writing and the things that didn't work as well. So I just want to say, for the writers here amongst you, if you're keen to push your writing craft and career and productivity, check out our suite of offerings at the How to Write Academy, and there'll be links below in the show notes. So make sure you check us out. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for watching or listening. Bye.
Bye.